Greetings, technology enthusiasts. I am Chandrahas and I am delighted to be here with you representing CyberBrainer. Do you not believe that the technology sector is advancing at an unprecedented rate, making this an opportune moment to acquire the skills that will facilitate your progress? With CyberBrainer, we are empowering you to take control of your own future. At CyberBrainer, we do not merely impart your interests. We assert that information is power, yet it is the application of knowledge that distinguishes you. Our courses are meant to equip you with essential skills, whether you are pursuing data science, understanding artificial intelligence, or delving into cybersecurity. Let us commence the session and seize the future today. Thank you.
So today, what we will say is under the setup, we had gone through the entire setup, whatever we had, the general preferences and everything. Under the accounting, we went through what the accounting lists are and what are the accounting preferences, how to manage the accounting periods. All this we have seen. So today what we'll see is how the taxes are set up within NetSuite. So let me open this for you. So there is a setup taxes page which we have already discussed how exactly this set of taxes is, and various taxes will actually be listed for different countries. You will be able to see different taxes over here. So the first thing that you need to do while setting up the tax is setting up the nexuses. So let us see how the nexus is set up. You go to the nexus and click on new nexus. Once you do that, you have to select what the country is. So this is United States, and then you can set up any state for that matter. You know, probably you're working for Arizona. Let us say so. This is how you set up the nexus. All you have to do is just click on this and the nexus will be created automatically. So a list of nexus would be available for you here. And if you go into the filters, you can see you can filter it by country. So for the United States. Now you see the Arizona was not set up initially. There were only 2 states and provinces which were set up, California and New York. So I have set up this Arizona for you. Now once you go into this accounting setup, if you scroll down, there are different things. One is called a nexus. So once you set up the nexus, then you have these things. So if you scroll down, you have your tax control accounts. That is one thing, and then you have your tax types and then tax codes. So if you go into the tax account, so as of now you will not see, you will have only, if you see this, you will have only the tax payable Arizona, because as in when you create your nexus, this will be automatically created. Initially when I did not put in the Arizona as the state, this was not there. So now this tax payable tax account has been created. And then if you go into the tax types, so under the tax types you can actually filter it by country again. And then these are the different tax type that you are able to see. Next, let's go to the tax codes. So when you go to the tax codes and you can filter it by state again, as of now you see only the New York and California. If you see, you have the tax codes starting from New York and California only. Anything that starts with NY is for New York, and anything that starts with California is CA. So in total there are 457 tax codes as of now. However, the Arizona tax code is not visible if you see. We have created a nexus for Arizona, but the Arizona tax code is not visible. So how do you generate these tax codes? All you need to do is, once you create a nexus, you have to go into the setup accounting. And then when you scroll down, there is something called as you state sales tax tables. So open that. And once you open, you have to select the state which you have created. You see, this state's already imported on New York and California, but Arizona is not yet done. So, and the tax codes and all are actually predefined for United States in the NetSuite. So you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just create a nexus for that particular state. Now what I'm doing is I have created a nexus for Arizona state. So how do you set up the nexus? All you have to do is go into this nexus, click on new, and then create a new nexus. That's it. After doing that, when you go into the tax codes, you are seeing that the taxes are generated only for New York and California. As of now, there is nothing generated for Arizona. So let's go back to the page. All you have to do is go into this accounting. This is very simple. Actually, the state tax tables are already imported. There are backend tables which are generated for entire states of United States. I mean all the states. I don't know how many other, like 25 or 29. So many states are there. So for all those states, you will have it. So you have to click on this Arizona. Scroll down and then just click on save. That's it. So once you do that, once you finish, you'll get a notification email. So this is the email which has been specified in our general preferences. And that is the reason you will get an email here. However, if you go here, I have generated the tax codes for Arizona now. So there are about 456 earlier. Now I see 6060. You see this? The reason behind that is Z tax codes have been generated from SZRUK, SZRK. So all these tax codes will be generated automatically. Now, whenever you transact, whenever you put in the purchase orders or sales orders based on the zip code. Based on the city, based on the zip code for this, automatically this particular tax code will be picked up. So let us say this is a city code ZMIO, that whatever you saw 1.25 is the tax code for that particular city. So automatically that tax code will be picked up based on the zip code which the vendor, on the vendor you will specify one of the zip codes over there. So based on that zip code, the tax will be picked up automatically. So this is how the tax codes are generated within NetSuite. Now let us say your client. Whoever you are working for, let us say you're working for Rolls-Royce maybe. So that Rolls-Royce has got their presence in they do the transactions with 10 different states. They have vendors and customers in 10 different states. So for all those 10 different states, they have to create a nexus. First of all, Arizona, California, New York. If you click on new nexus, you will have all those states available. So for all those states that they're dealing with, they have to generate these nexuses: Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware. So all these states and provinces which you have there, they have to create a nexus and then they have to run that state tax table. And automatically, once you see how many tax codes were generated down, close to 150 tax codes were generated within few seconds. So this is how the tax structure is defined on NetSuite. The tax codes are defined in this way: create a nexus and then run the state tax. Run state tax import tables. That's it, as simple as that. So likewise you have. So the important thing that you need to understand is your nexus, your tax control accounts, your tax types and the tax codes. So if you go into the tax types and tax control accounts again, so these have been created already, the tax types which will come automatically as part of the United States. These are the tax types that you have for United States. And when you come to these tax accounts. So for state tax payable Arizona, this is the one that got created when I created the nexus. Automatically it gets created. You don't have to do anything manually. But if you are dealing with other countries, what I have shown you now is only for United States and NetSuite is built in for United States. However, if you go for different countries like a United Kingdom, so in that case, if you are implementing for United Kingdom, you have to create the nexus and then you have to create the tax codes manually. These tax types and tax codes, you have to create them manually. So if you go and view the tax types, you can click on one of the tax types. See Arizona tax type, United States and New York. These are the ones which are a part of the tax type already. So likewise, and these codes that you have here, if you click on each of the codes, these codes will be linked with the tax agencies and the tax accounts. Tax agency will be automatically created as well. So where exactly would you get the tax agencies? Actually, they will not be visible here. The tax agencies will be automatically generated through NetSuite. They will not be visible under the actual table that you have here. So the first thing that you need to do is set up the nexus for different countries. I'm telling you, set up the nexus. And when you go into the tax types, when you click on the new tax type, it will give you the option. When you click on, let's say for United Kingdom, for UK, you want to create a tax type. Then here you have to specify what is your liability account and what is your VAT on purchase accounts. And then you have to name this tax type. Once that is done, if you click on this new tax code, here it will give you an option for the tax account. The tax account has to be generated. A tax account, where will you create it? A tax account is nothing but this thing I have shown you earlier, which is a tax account. Tax control accounts are nothing but your tax accounts. So once you create your tax accounts, all these will be available here. The tax agency will be there. And then along with that, you will have the tax account for that particular state. Tax type. Here is where you will select the tax type. So for the tax code to be created, you need to have the tax type, which is this. This is the tax type. The tax type you will create. And then you will select the tax type here along with the tax. Agency can be selected over here and then the tax account. Do not worry about all these things, guys. If you are doing an implementation for a UK client, they will provide you all these details. They'll provide you what is the tax type, what is the tax liability account, what is the asset purchase account. They will give you, the UK tax type. Maybe they will provide you with these details. You don't have to create anything out of the blue. They will provide you these details. And once the details are provided, they will provide you a list of tax codes as well. Let's say like for UK, one of the province has got 90 tax codes. So you will have to import all those tax codes. And unfortunately on NetSuite, there is no import option for a tax code. You would have to do all these things manually. They will let you know what is the tax name, what is the tax type that you have to select, what is the tax account, and everything they'll provide. So you will have to create all these tax codes manually if you are working for a client from outside of the United States. But if it is within the United States, then obviously just create an access, run the state tax import table, and that's it. Everything else will be taken care by NetSuite automatically. And 80% of your clients will be from United States. Usually they wouldn't be from a different country. So this is about the tax structure. Any questions on this? Any questions on whatever we discussed so far? Oh yes, sir. Tell me. Can you open the tax code? Internal ID showing minus the internal ID. Because I don't want to stop you in the middle. So that's. So you want me to view one? No, this internal ID. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this internal ID. Never worry about internal IDs in any transaction. Internal IDs are generated by NetSuite automatically. So sir, whatever you see here, it is not in our hands. Internal ID, even if you're doing the CSV imports, you will not touch internal IDs because they'll be generated automatically. Only the external ID you will be able to provide. And in this case, you won't have the external IDs too because you cannot import this tax codes manually through CSV import. You have to do them manually. And whenever you're doing manually, there is no external ID. It's only the internal ID that you have that will be generated. So when you're creating, see, even if you click on new tax code and when you create a new tax code also, there will be nowhere where you can specify the internal ID. It gets generated automatically. No, so the negative values that you see here, this might have been done because of some bundles and because they are pre-configured already. See, I'll tell you what. So let us say you're doing the first transaction on NetSuite. Where should it start from the internal ID? Exactly. So this is how the internal ID starts. But these things, the state tax, run tables, and all they're already in the system. Correct? You understood the point. So that is the reason the internal IDs are negative. So you are not generating these internal IDs. It is the system that generates the internal ID. So -5, 6, 2. There might be a few other things as well. Apart from the tax codes which are there in the system, there might be thousands of things that you can generate through NetSuite. And they will also have the negative internal ID because they are already generated within the system. It's just that we are bringing the pump up onto our screen by running that state tax import table. That's it. Any questions on that? I take it as a no. So just remember, hey guys, if you are doing the implementation for United States client, all you need to do is create an access and run the state tax import table. Simple as that. All the tax codes will be generated automatically. Do you want me to run another tax code for you? Just since we're doing this, want me to create another nexus? Yes, sir. United States already Arizona, California, and let's run for Alabama, which was not there. I created the nexus. So now if you see, the tax codes are 626. I'm not creating any tax types. I'm not doing anything, but I'll go into the accounting, scroll down, and there is something called a state tax import table that I have shown you earlier. This is what it is. You state tax. So these tax codes are already available within the system. Now I select Alabama and then click on save. So if I go back to my tax codes again and I refresh it, see that 153 to be precise have been generated and which are for Alabama. So I have Arizona now and these are the Alabama codes. Everything that starts with L is for Alabama. This is how you generate it. And these tax codes, the 2.2 cent, 1%, 4 cent, 3%, whatever it is. So they get picked up automatically with the zip code that you have specified on the vendor and customer. If you're dealing with, one of the zip codes from that vendor, then obviously it will pick up the rate from this tax codes that we have generated here. And one more question, sir, is the taxes vary depending upon the city to city? Of course. Oh, every zip code. It is based on the zip codes for United States. So Alabama has got 153, different tax codes, and see, it may not differ from city to city, but then in that particular province, in that particular state, there might be different zones and different districts. They might have different tax codes for them. So that is how United States tax structure is defined. I mean, it's not like India that you have state-wise tax codes, state-wise GST codes, state-wise things. For different items, we have different codes. Let's say, in case of electronics, you have a different tax code. I mean tax percentage. And in case of mobile phones, in case of mobile covers, in case of the other things, you have everything, furniture for food, for restaurants, everything. There is a different tax structure and tax code and tax percentage. So that is how it is defined in the United States as well. So, since we are done with the tax, structure tax, everything is done now from the accounting part. We were actually dealing with those things. The entire tax structure is created. So the only thing left out in the accounting is the chart of accounts. This is a very important topic. These 45 minutes we will cover only for the chart of accounts. So what exactly are chart of accounts? As I have discussed already earlier, you might have different type of chart of accounts. What are those different types? If you click on this new and then you see this type. These are all the different type of chart of accounts that you have for any ERP, not only for NetSuite, but these are different types of chart of accounts. So we may not be able to go through each type and understand what exactly are these chart of accounts, but I'll explain you in detail. You know most of them, but if you still have any questions, you will have to Google and understand what exactly are the different type of chart of accounts which will be used in ERPs. So you have an expense account, a primary bank account. What is an expense account? So you can define certain account as an expense type wherein, let's say you want to show it as an expense in the system. On NetSuite, whenever you want to, let's say a travel expense, a food expense, a restaurant expense, or, probably an outing that you've gone out with, one of the teams. And then you have a client dinners, and all these things can be defined under the expense account. So what is this expense account? When you are doing the purchase orders, if you remember, under the accounting preferences, I have shown you something that when you're putting in the purchase orders, there is an expense tab which we have enabled use expense on the purchase orders. Do you remember that? So if you scroll down, there are two tabs here. Under items, you see expense and the items also. So if you tab, you can actually select your account. You can select the category or you can select the accounts under which they see. As of now, hold on, let me select a vendor. So once you select a vendor, the subsidiary defaults. So based on that subsidiary, for that particular subsidiary, if you have an expense account created in the system, then it will be visible here. So if I do this now, earlier I was not able to get the accounts, but once the vendor is selected and the corresponding subsidiary has been defaulted. If you see this, all these are the expense account operating expenses, operating expense, advertising, amortization expense, travel expense, miscellaneous expense, automotive, gas and oil. So the customer will give you all these operating expense type of accounts that you have to create. So when you are creating these accounts, in the accounts section under the chart of accounts, you will have to select the expense type. That's it, as simple as that. So all these accounts that you see here, bad debt, expense repairs, automotive maintenance. Whenever you are maintaining, you have your vehicles like the JCBs or the tower cranes or erection towers. All these things are your vehicles. And if you are maintaining them, then you have to. You can actually expense them into a different account. You will select this account and say that probably $1,000, $100,000, $1,500 have been. I mean we have paid so and so amount for the maintenance of these cash and short commission expense. So all these are your expense accounts which have been defined in the system. So if you go back here, that is what your expense type is. Now, if I go back to the list, where exactly do I have those accounts? If you click on the type, I'm just sorting that by the way. So, and then I say expense, I can see all these are my expense accounts. The type is expense and all these are the same accounts that you will see under the drop down that I have shown you earlier. That is how all the different accounts are created. The chart of accounts that you have there, they are created based on that. So that is the expense account. Now, what is a primary bank account? What do you think is a primary bank account? Nalini, any thoughts on that? So the bank where we deal. Exactly. So your client will have their primary bank accounts. Probably they have their own bank account when you are dealing with a client, as maybe N21 Diagnostics. Now that N21 Diagnostics company will have their own bank accounts in like 4 different banks, maybe in Citibank, maybe in Chase Bank, maybe in some RBL bank. So you have to define those accounts over here. You will specify what the number is, you will specify what the name is, and then you will specify the bank account type, the primary bank account. So if you go one question, sir, what is a number? What number? We already discussed about it. So when we were checking these preferences, if you remember, under the set preferences, we were actually dealing with use internal IDs and use account numbers, if you remember. No, not here, sorry, in the accounting preferences itself. So if you to the accounting preferences, we've already discussed about this when we were checking this. There is a preference called use account numbers. So whatever you see here, when you're going to the purchase order, when I was clicking on the purchase order, when I was selecting those accounts, so whatever you see here as part of this numbers, these are the numbers that you know, the account numbers that you can specify here. These are provided by the customer. Got it. Any question? So those are the numbers which you can. These are not the account numbers, by the way. The bank account numbers are different. These are just the numbers that you can specify so that whenever you are, dealing with purchase orders, instead of typing in like cash debitors or petty cash, you can actually type the number and it picks up the account automatically. So that is your primary bank and the accounts receivable. So whenever you are dealing with the sales part, when you are invoicing the customer, they will make a payment and that payment is actually so. Likewise, you have all those different type of chart of accounts. So in all these, we were actually discussing only the types. And then you have fixed assets, other assets and current assets. So fixed assets are something that you can define, the sessions that you can actually define. Let's say you have a property. So every company will actually show certain fixed assets. All you have intangible. There's something called as intangible assets and tangible assets. I will let you know. I'll let you know what fixed assets are, by the way. So just for now, just understand that fixed assets are nothing. But you might have a property and you want to depreciate that property over the next 5 years, 10 years or something. You have an equipment, you have buildings, you have plant and machinery. All these things can be depreciated over a certain period of time. What the customers do is they define certain amount, let's say like adult $60 in. So for today, the cost of that plant and machinery is 60,000, but 10 years later, it's not going to be 60,000. So they show it as a depreciation. I will show you how exactly this is done when we deal with the fixed assets. And then accounts payable credit card. You understood all these things. Income. Income is the one which deals with sales. Again, cost of goods sold. This also comes as part of the sale, which means when we are selling something, there is a cost associated with that particular item. And that cost has to be shown somewhere in one of the accounts. And that account is your cost of goods. Sold account, other income, other expense, deferred revenue. All these types are the chart of accounts. So how do you create them? You can come here. You can specify one of the numbers. And then you can specify if you want this to be a parent, a child of certain account, then you can actually do that. So when you do this, let us say I am selecting bank account. So once you do that, the type automatically becomes bank. The reason behind that is the child can be a bank account only if the parent is a bank account. So likewise, if I take any cost of goods sold, maybe, let us say, or if I take any fixed asset type, this is a fixed asset account and this becomes fixed automatically. So if I take the accounts receivable, maybe let us see 6,000, maybe the accounts receivable or something. Let us say expense. If I'm creating an expense account, so this type becomes automatically expense because the 600 parent is already an expense account. So that is the reason the type becomes expense automatically for me. And then you can actually give the same as description also. You can specify the date on which you want this account to be created. And then these are the general rate type and cash flow rate type. Now these are the currency exchange rate types. So whenever you're dealing with this, you have to specify if it is average or if it is current or if it is historical. Who will do that? Your customer will do it. Don't worry about it. All you have to do is send out the template with this general rate. Type selection as average, current or historical. They will fill in the data and then send it out to you. Now, when does this currency get enabled? This currency gets enabled only if you are dealing with the cash or bank. You see this. I selected cash and then the currency got enabled for us. Let's create a bank account. Something like this. So, and this is your, what is then inventory? So, inventory is that whenever you are receiving something, when you're selling something, then in that case there is, if the goods are going out of the warehouse and the account type is related to that. So, in that case, you will select the inventory that you know. This particular account type is an inventory. And what's this? Eliminate intercompany transactions. If you remember, I was talking about company A and company B. So company A wants to buy something from B. The company B becomes a seller for company A and company A is a vendor for company B. In those cases, whenever you want to deal with the intercompany stuff, that is when this eliminated intercompany transactions has to be enabled. Now summary account. So if you let me show this, if you remember, there is a parent, there is a child, one child, two child, three, whatever it is. So like this, we are creating the chart of accounts. So what happens is this parent account which is created, the first account which is created is always marked as a summary account. Now what summary means is that there are no specific transactions that get posted to that particular parent. However, I have 2000 here. I have 3 and then there are some $4.500 of worth transactions have been done over here. And then the parent will have the summation of all these things. This plus that, 9,500 will be on that, and no transactions will be posted to the parent if you mark it as summary. So if I go back to let me create this first and then I'll show you. If I go back to the list, there would be certain accounts which are already summary. And for those summary accounts, the transactions will not be posted. Only the child transactions that you have. The amounts on the child transactions will be a summary on the parent. Any questions on that? Any questions there? Thank you. I take it as a no. 1 second. So what is this? Restrict to department, restrict to class, and restrict to location. What actually this does is you have created certain departments classes under the parent subsidiary. So you can restrict your account, the GL account that you're creating. You can restrict that to a department or to a class or to a location. And just remember that your bank accounts. Whenever you're dealing with the bank accounts, you cannot create the bank accounts for multiple subsidiaries. You can only create the bank account for a single subsidiary. So if I include children, now you see this. It says bank accounts and credit card accounts must be restricted to a single subsidiary, which means one bank account is mapped only with one subsidiary. You cannot have one bank account dealing with multiple subsidiaries. So that is the reason you cannot include the children for the bank accounts. However, for the other types, even if it's for expense or if it is for fixed assets or if it is for accounts receivable, accounts payable, other expenses, all these things, you can actually make this chart of account available for all the subsidiaries by clicking on parent and then include children. If you do that, that particular account will be available for Australia, Canada, Mohan Electronics, United Kingdom, United States, East West, all these things will be available. So what I meant to say was to be more precise. I have a vendor for subsidiary 1. For 2, 3, 4, 5, I have a vendor. So when I'm creating the chart of account, let us say I'm creating accounts receivable. And I'm marking this as include children, which means this particular accounts receivable will be available for my vendors across these subsidiaries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across all these subsidiaries. I can use the same accounts, receivable account. However, so you might ask me, if we are using the same chart of account for all these subsidiaries, for all these different vendors, how do we know what amount is being posted to which vendor? In that case, under the reports, there is a subsidiary filter. You can filter by subsidiary, you can filter by vendor, and then you can see what amounts have been posted to which accounts. I mean the same account. Of course, it is this accounts receivable, same account that you've been using across multiple subsidiaries, across multiple vendors. But you will have those. When we see the reports, maybe it will be a little difficult for you to visualize what I'm talking about. But when we see the reports, I'll show you how we filter out the subsidiaries, how we filter the vendors, and then we will see how the amounts are getting posted to each of those accounts. Any question? All. So we will create this bank account for the subsidiary as East. And what you are creating the type you know, this is a primary bank account. So don't bother about the showing fixed assets management thing. When you are creating a fixed assets type of account, that particular account has to be showing up on. I mean, you have to select showing fixed assets management for this. Let's say you have to click on this, click on control and then select these things. So once you do that, these GL accounts will be available for selection under the assets. I will show that to you later on when we come to the fixed assets. But as of now, this is how the accounts are created, but the chart of accounts are not created manually. Usually they are not created manually. One odd account, if there are like 450 accounts, let us say all these are created through a CSV import. So you will have these fields in the CSV, import the number name, sub, account type, currency general rate type. Cash flow rate type, eliminate intercompany transactions. All these will be fields on the chart of account. Whatever fields that you see here on the screen now will be available in that chart of account. Excel sheet. You will have to map that and you'll have to put in the entire 450 accounts in that particular sheet along with the parent. Who is the parent? So if you are creating a parent, if you have parent-child relationship, then the parent account has to be given first, because the child, when you're creating the child, the parent has to be available in the system. If that's not available, it will throw an error saying that the parent is not there. So you have to make sure that the parent is listed on top of the children. Once the parent get created, automatically you will have the parent selection available in the list under that for the child chart of accounts that you create, not only in the child chart of accounts. Even in case of departments, classes, locations, subsidiaries, whatever you're doing, you need to make sure that the parents are defined first, so that when the parents are available in the system, that is when, see, as of now, if even this, if I edit this, if I want to put in some parent sub account of, if I have to, then that has to be available in the system first. If I say you is checking and that is not available in system at all, then obviously the system will throw an error correct. Similarly, you should also have the subsidiary. The subsidiary has to be there in the system. So for the chart of account to be created, what all need to be created? Initially, you should have the currencies, you should have the parent accounts, you should have the subsidiaries, you should have the departments, classes, locations. So after all these things are created, only then you can create the chart of accounts. Does that make sense? Because this list has to be available in the system. If this list itself is not there, you cannot create the chart of accounts. Got it? Hope I'm making sense. Yes, tell him. Yes, got it. Got it. So what I meant to say is, in any transaction, not only in chart of accounts, when you're creating the departments, you should have the subsidiaries. When you're creating the locations, you should have the subsidiaries, because subsidiary is a selection on the location, subsidiary is a selection on the class, subsidiary is a selection on the department, and your subsidiary is a selection on chart of accounts as well. So the first thing that you would ever create in a system, once the bundle is installed, it is called a NOM bundle, which is North American bundle. When you're dealing with North America, of course. So NOM manufacturing bundle, NOM purchasing bundle, NOM sales bundle. So all these bundles will be available. So once the bundle is installed, the first thing that you do is enable features. The next thing that you do is set up your accounting preferences. After that, what you will do? You will set up your user preferences. Set up user preferences and then the general preferences. In the general preference, you have to specify what the company is, what is the company information. All these things have to be done. After doing that, any transaction that you do on NetSuite first subsidiary, and then you can create the segmentation, classes, departments, locations. So once these are available, then you can create your chart of accounts. So of course the currencies would be coming in with the bundle automatically, so you don't have to worry about the currencies. You have to create your subsidiaries, classes, locations and departments, then the chart of accounts. So these are the vital, very important data that needs to be in the system before you do any transactions for that matter. The reason behind that is if you want to put in a purchase order, that has to be enabled. So that comes in the enable features. If you want to put in a sales order, then that has to be enabled. That is a part of enable features. And when you are dealing with any transactions, only when you are. When you want to put in a purchase order, then a vendor has to be in the system. So after creating the subsidiaries, locations, departments, you will create your chart of accounts and then you will create your vendors, customers and employees. I'm sorry, employees are the first option that you will create because at least one person should have access. One administrator should have access to the NetSuite. So you, as a functional consultant, you will identify who's the administrator from the client side and you will give them NetSuite access in production and in sandbox as well. So once the employees are created, once the subsidiaries are there, chart of accounts, classes, departments, locations, vendors and customers, all these are there. What else do you think is missing out to create a purchase order? Just think and then let me know. So I'm saying tell me. Perfect. So when you want to deal with certain things, you want to purchase something, when you want to sell something, you need to have items within the system. The first is employee access. Next is subsidiary. And let us go one after the other. First is the bundle installation. Now, once bundle is installed, you will enable the features and then you will set up the accounting preferences. And when will you do that? When you are actually conducting the personalization sessions with the client, whatever what they want to enable, what they want to disable. And these are module wise, by the way, which means R2R. Somebody will do R2R, somebody will do C, somebody will do P2P, somebody will do P2C, somebody will do a lead to quote. So, based on those personalization sessions, enable features are done and then the accounting preferences. This also is module wise. Whoever is dealing with certain models will enable and disable accounting preferences. So everything will be set up. You have the bundle installation done, you have the enable features, you have the accounting preferences. Everything is set up in the system now. And then I think we can put the employee access here. And then enable features, accounting preferences. And then comes your subsidiary structure. Once the subsidiary is created, this is all classification. What is classification? Subsidiary department, location and class. Everything comes under segmentation. This is called as classification or segmentation. So you have to create this and then you will create your chart of accounts because all these are selections in chart of accounts. After chart of accounts is created, you will create vendors and then the customers and then comes your items. So all different types of items. It could be your inventory, non-inventory. Assembly items, all these have to be created. So that is what I was talking about when I was talking about the initial data migration of just 5 of each type as sample. And this sample also. You should have all these available. So once your account is set up in this way, you can create your windows, you can create your customers' items. So once all this is set up, then you will do a walkthrough. Walkthrough of different modules. R2R, P2P, O2C, record to report, procure to pay, order to cash, lead to quote, project to cash, marketing to ROI. So these are the different modules that you would actually do a D2B design to build. These are the different modules that you would do a walkthrough of. So when you want to do a walkthrough, what is a walkthrough? Walkthrough is nothing but you are putting in all transactions and you're showing the client how NetSuite system is working. So what exactly needs to be done? All these things have to be created. We have gone in exactly the same way, just like the way we do the implementation. See, I have shown you what is a bundle installation. I've shown you what is the access looking like. I have shown you what is an employee access. Then we discussed about enable features. Then we discussed about accounting preferences, everything in detail. Then we came to the segmentation. We've seen how the subsidiary is created, department class locations are created, and then the chart of accounts are created. Now we'll see how the vendors and customers are set up. And I've also discussed how the items are set up through the CSV imports as well. So we are ready for the walkthrough now. We have everything in the system which is required for my transaction to go through. So what are my required things? When I want to put in a purchase order, I need to have a vendor, which I've already created. One vendor is created. And then I need to have an item that needs to be selected on the purchase order, which we have already created. And then we also might need to have expense accounts in order to show on the purchase order. We do that. Expense accounts are already created. And then the tax structure. And did we do the tax structure already, which has to be picked up on the purchase orders? Yes, we have done that. So this is also created. So these are my master data which I need for the transactions to be going through within my system. If I want to put in a purchase order, I need to have these things. If I want to put in a sales order, I need to have chart of accounts. The accounts are receivable, which is already created within the system. Customers are already created. There are certain. We did not create them, but there are certain customers in the system already. I'll show you how the customers are created, by the way. So customer is already there, and item we have created already the items, and the tax structure is already there. Then I'm ready for my walkthrough so that we can get into the transactions. So this is how the entire setup is done, guys. Any questions on this? So far, what all we have covered? I have just shown you a brief, of what needs to be done. What is a data migration? What is the master data which should be available for me to actually create something in the system, to create a purchase order, to create a sales order, to create a work order? These are the minimum things that I need to have in the system which we have created already. Likewise, you might have certain other master data as well, which is your accounting lists. What is your accounting list? You will have certain categories. Vendor category, customer category. You can set up all those things. Payment methods, price levels. I have also defined price levels in detail with you as well. Like when would the quantity, wise pricing level that you can define. All these things have been covered already. You can have your vendor category. Now, these accounting lists that you have here are the master data which you will be using on some entities. Which means the vendor category, it will go on the vendor. Customer category, it will go on the vendor again. On the vendor record, you will have these selections. So, whatever vendor category that you have selected, you might have a 1099 contractor, consultant and insurance supply agency, or a collaborative company that you have there. So these are the different customer retail vendors, wholesale vendors. You can create all these things as categories. And where do you see these categories being used when you are actually doing the reporting? So in this month, my retail vendors, how many? How many? I mean, how much of payment did I make to this retail vendors? How much of payment did I make to this wholesale vendors? So you can actually have those filters and then you can do that. So all these are your lists that you have here. You just have to go through each of the customer message, project type, project status, payment method. These are the lists that you can create it, and all these lists will be used somewhere in the system. They might be used on a vendor, they might be used on a customer, they might be used on an item. Item category would be there. Vendor category would be there. Customer category would be there. So all these are actually used as part of the list that you have over there. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.